Right, well, thank you very much indeed for coming tonight, indeed, and thank you to Virginie for organising this and inviting us along. I'm Anne-Laure Donskoy. I'm one of the original co-founders of the 3million, which, just like Ely for Europe, we started in July of 2016. Because really, as I keep saying everywhere, apathy was just not an option. We had to do something. So there was a meeting which was organised locally, and I tracked down the organiser of that meeting. It was Nicolas Hadden. And I said, well, we can't wait until September, because the French thing to do is we wait until September, la rentrée. Yeah. And I said, well, no, we have got to do something. So we met in July, I think 21st of July, I think, in the pub, as you do, because we didn't have an office or anything. And afterwards, well, we've been working a lot. We started to try and find our feet and see how we could get organised. And most of what we've been doing in the first 6 months was trying to understand how to do lobbying in the UK. And so we met with a local MP, that was Ten Ham, and she had an idea to organise a mass lobby. So we followed this up, and we did our first mass lobby on the Parliament in February of 2017. Now you have to know that anybody can organise a mass lobby. This is your right as a citizen, and this means that you can go and put pressure on MPs and go and meet them in the Parliament in Westminster to petition and lobby and campaign and all the rest of it. And also at the beginning of 2017, this is when we started to work with British in Europe. The government tried to pitch us against each other, you know, the interests of British in Europe against the interests of EU citizens in the UK on the basis of so-called reciprocity. And that didn't work. It completely backfired, because this is, as I said, this is when we started to see actually we should work together, because so many of our issues really overlap. And also it was about putting expertise and competences together and support each other as well. So we've been doing a lot of joint actions and lobbying since then. We've been producing God knows how many reams of joint papers. All of that is on our website, which you can download anytime. We also do some research. I'm the research coordinator for the 3million. This is what I normally do in my normal life. I'm a researcher in health and social care. So I've been doing some research on permanent residency, in particular the experiences of applying for the dreaded PR. Because we kept hearing on the Facebook pages, you know, people had so many problems, but trying to really get a sense of what those problems were was really, we needed to have that evidence, you know, go beyond just, you know, hearsay or anecdotes and produce some actual empirical data. So I did the research and produced a report, which is also on our website. And this report has really helped as well focus parts of the government on what really needs to go. That, as well as the evidence we produced in the Common Select Committee on Exiting the EU. We presented it last January. This is when they decided that we no longer have to produce, you know, all the bits of evidence of every time we've been in and out of the country from the dot that we've been here. So some people have been here, like me, over 30 years. You know, some people have been here 50, 60, 70 years, and you know, it was just unreasonable to ask them to produce every bloody single ticket. So, and I actually turned up on the day with what was going to be about half of my PR application. I didn't intend to do this, but it was I think I've said, you know, and here is one I produced earlier, kind of thing made earlier. And I actually had to take a suitcase to bring all that stuff with me. And Hilary Ben's jaw dropped. They just had no conception of what it was like to put together one of this, you know, PR applications. And as I said, it was about half of it because I'm self-employed, so you can imagine, you know, they want to see absolutely every single copy, invoice, the lot. Which is ridiculous, unreasonable, really. So a lot of things kind of started to change.
And it was important that it was us, you know, citizens, ordinary citizens, bringing this evidence to them. We've also been feeding into a number of processes, and such as I don't know if you've heard the Migration Advisory Committee. Last July, the government tasked them to do a report on the future of migration in the UK. So they've been talking to a number of groups and inviting a number of groups, civil society, experts, to submit evidence on what they think the future of migration in the UK could look like. So we did. I did a quick exercise with members of our forum as well as newsletter readers to try and gauge a sense of what it's been like for them to come here, and I produced a report on that, and now they want to see me, which is kind of good news. So the bulk of our work has been first of all with the UK, and then from about March of last year, sorry, I've just had the dreaded Aussie flu, so it's a bit of remnant there, so apologies for that. And yeah, in March of last year we started really going at Brussels, because we felt, you know, the UK is only one part of the story, so we organised and we petitioned and managed to get to a first meeting with Michel Barnier the day before Article 50 was triggered, so 28th of March of last year. This was a really important moment, because again it's really important that civil society should, or that Europe should come and listen to civil society, not just the experts or politicians. And we've been lobbying Brussels ever since. We've been back to Brussels several times. We've had a second meeting with Barnier as well as with Guy Verhofstadt in end of November, early December, so before the agreement. We've also been talking again on the UK side with the Department for Exiting the EU and the Home Office. That's been really, really difficult. For months and months and months, they just completely ignored us. And then when they found out we were going to have this meeting with Michel Barnier in March, maybe we should do something about this. Maybe we should see them. I went to a couple of those meetings that were really frustrating. There was a lot of goodwill. I'd say civil servants in the room were actually very pro-EU and completely, shall we say, not really happy with what's going on. Not that, of course, I'm not saying that, and you know, but that was very much the feeling. So it's been quite a frustrating exercise trying to get sometimes any sense out of the Home Office and Dexus, but also trying to get them to commit to guaranteeing our rights or this or that. So you get very much a sense that they're still working it out, or other people would say making it up as they go along, but that's, you didn't hear me say that. So going back again to the EU, because this is what we're really doing at the moment. We keep lobbying MEPs, and we have an advocacy group excuse me, that was constituted in the spring, and we try to make it so that we have representatives from each of the member states. So when we go to Brussels, we try to go and visit our own nation state MEPs and try and have a dialogue with them. That's been really useful, and again it's about these people. The hope is that they take this back to, in my case, to Paris, in other case back to the heads of state, so that things kind of get moving a little bit. So we've also had meetings with the Commission, that's Michel Barnier's team, the European Parliament. We've presented and given evidence in the European Parliament once, but we also go sometimes to working group meetings. That's also when we can get the funding to do this, which is extremely difficult to do. We have been invited to go to technical meetings within the Parliament, and also learning, because most of us are just ordinary citizens. We have to learn how all of these things work. And it's quite complex. It's very interesting, but it's very complex, and you know, we don't always have the time to learn. So yeah,
And also with I think the most difficult one has been the Council for the European Union. They are it's a very different feeling there, much more closed. So this is roughly what we do. And needless to say that it's very much not 24/7, but certainly 7 day a week kind of occupation. And I certainly want my life back. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. We're all still volunteers, completely. We were looking for funding. We've just starting to set up as a charity, but that takes time because you need to pay lawyers to do that. So we've got a pro bono person, but we're now a limited company, which is really kind of the first step. Because we're probably going to set up like a lot of these kind of organisations like Hope Not Hate, etc. So we have kind of the charity bit and then the political bit. So we can do more stuff and more grounded stuff and bringing in more people from the grassroots, be a proper grassroots organisation. Not that we're not at the moment, but it's a kind of, will establish us much more solidly in that regard. So this takes time and a hell of a lot of energy. So this is kind of where we're at. 2016 referendum, then Article 50 is triggered, and indeed we're still in limbo actually. Number of deportation of EU citizens has gone up. This is quite a staggering figure, but we know that a lot of it is not really to do with Brexit. It's a lot to do with also the Home Office being utterly incompetent or acting illegally, for instance, in the case of homeless people. And there's just been a judgment that says that the government has been acting unlawfully. Oh, no, sorry. Okay. So, yes. So this is very much where we're at now. We have clear choices that we have to make, but also that the negotiators have to make over our rights. So as you know, there's been the agreement in December, which is binding and non-binding. It's binding only in the sense that it will happen if the EU has been working on the basis of nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. Which is so irritating.
Which is why we're still in limbo.
Yeah. Which is why we're still in limbo. Well, partly why. Because they're right to this is a way of putting pressure on the UK government, and so far it's kind of worked. But it's also caved in. I mean, needless to say, we've been shafted. That's the long and the short of it. In December, despite all the nice talks we've had with all of these people, they were prepared to make compromises, and that's exactly what we've done, especially with regard to settled status. Settled status does not follow, it doesn't, it's not in the spirit of the negotiating guidelines. The negotiating guidelines are very clear, they're saying that it should follow EU law. And settled status is anything but. It's a lesser status which will confer less rights on us. It's very different from what we have now. At the moment, we have the choice of applying for permanent residence. It's not mandatory. It's what they call a declaratory process. It's a process that just confirms our rights. That's all it does. Whereas settled status is something we have to apply for. And if we are successful, it grants us rights. So that's the difference. So one is declaratory, it confirms the rights. The other one is constitutive and grants us a right only if we are successful. Now the government has been stressing and making a lot of noises around the process. Light touch, this and that and the other. It's not going to be light touch if you're going to have systematic criminality checks, good conduct checks, checks with HMRC, DWP, etc. That's not light touch at all. I don't know how they claim they want to do it with a 2-week turnaround. I mean, we know, and there's nothing to do with Brexit, the government and a lot of the departments have, their digital systems are not up to scratch. The error rate, as far as we're concerned, is quite high. It's about 10%, the Home Office.
at the moment already, yes, pretty much the latest figures we've seen for rejections for PR is about 34%. Some of it is due to mistakes on the part of the Home Office, and others because people find the process still too difficult. So one of the things we're saying, look, you claim you want to have to introduce a new stimulus process. Why don't you do the right thing and make PR now simple? Then you will encourage people by definition, or the people will want to apply if it's a lot more simple than 85 pages and 3.5 tons of documents and a lot of energy and money and the rest of it. It's so obvious, and it's also a very different way of treating citizens and foreigners. One is a welcoming, fashion of integrating us within society, and the other one is very much putting us into a box. We are different. We are overnight third country nationals, which is a very weird situation to find yourself in. And also we will lose a lot of our rights. There are a lot of issues still around family reunification. Where do I have the because what's going to happen on the 29th of March 2019 at 11 p.m. here is that we will lose all our rights. That's the exit position. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to fall off the sky overnight, but it means that things start changing from that point on. There's still a lot of uncertainties around, what's going to happen. Will there be a transition period? What will it look like for us? But also, what will it look like for people from Norway and Liechtenstein and Luxembourg and Oysterland? They're not at the moment within the scope of the draft of the withdrawal agreement. The withdrawal agreement is being drafted now, already. What was I going to say? So we still have a number of outstanding issues. So family reunification is one. He's somewhere here. This is because also life is complex. Families and relations are made, unmade. People find new partners, new children are born. And when this happens, especially post-Brexit, this is when the problem starts. You could very well imagine a family now, and then for whatever reason, partners or spouses go their own way, divorce or just separate, and then they meet somebody else, and then there are new children. You can imagine that one set of the family is okay, protected and covered by the withdrawal agreement, the other one isn't. This is the sort of thing we are looking at the moment, making sure that everybody is covered. The EU has been talking a lot about our life choices. I'm sorry, it's nothing to do with life choices. This is about rights. So this is another thing we're fighting at the moment. And certainly what we're fighting with the EU, with the UK in particular, is this impression the government keeps keeping, and which is sort of the general public seems to be buying as well, is that we're sorted. A lot of people I meet say, well, you're fine now, the agreement says your rights are protected. We know they're not. Okay. So what we're asking the negotiating parties is to guarantee our rights above and beyond what is known as a common understanding reached at the end of phase 1, that's the agreement from December. And we want our rights to be ring-fenced, absolutely ring-fenced, so that they don't become even further bargaining chips during phase 2, but also in case of a no-deal scenario. Make sure that ring-fencing acts as a safety net, that we keep our rights as they are now. After all, this is a promise that Mrs. May made during the Lancaster House speech, as well in the Florence speech. She said nothing should be, can't remember the exact word, but your life will do the same kind of thing. So we're trying to hold the government to account and make sure that they keep to their word. There's also the issue that the government has been saying, we've got this wonderful new status, settled status, and you can start applying for it probably from the autumn. That's the latest we've heard. There's a big problem with that, which is that because it's not covered, the detail of it is not covered in the withdrawal agreement at the moment. The government is writing guidelines around it at the moment as well during the first half of 2018. So say that the new scheme starts in the autumn on a voluntary basis. A lot of people will want to apply because we want certainty. That's normal. But because it's not in the withdrawal agreement, and the withdrawal agreement won't be ratified until 2019, what happens? What kind of a status is that? If it's done on a voluntary basis, but it has no legal basis, what happens? And also, what happens in case you apply on the voluntary basis, but you're rejected? There's no right of appeal because it's a voluntary scheme. So, a lot of it sounds, there's a lot of nice kind of buzz impressions and words around the settled status, but the reality is quite different. As soon as you start peeling the different layers of information we have around it, and a lot of lawyers have been commenting on it, people like Steve Pearce in particular, or Colin Young, there are a lot of problems with all of this. And also there might be divergence. They might set up a scheme which is very different from what will be in the withdrawal agreement. So yeah, so a lot of issues. And Mike Ward, I don't know, I'm sure there are Twitterers amongst you here. Twitter. Well, this is, I'm a new Twitteree, somebody called me. So, but anyway, there's somebody called Mike Ward, Dr. Mike Ward. And he's got a blog called A Bad Reason 99 at blogspot.co.uk, and he's written a piece very recently in the last few days around what's going to happen to us now. And it's written in with very human language, so you go and have a look at it. For once it's not too technical, because a lot of it is extremely technical. And he says, well, okay, so we get this settled status, and so we'll be allowed to live here provided we're here lawfully. That's a nice little word, not. And he says, well, even for the majority who will apply correctly for settlement, many questions spring to mind. What criteria will be used to grant or refuse settlement? What exactly does the UK government mean by lawfully in this context? Will applicants have to surrender their ID, travel documents when they apply? If so, how long for? There's sort of questions that we ask, when we confronted with this sort of system. So go and have a look at these blog posts. Very well written, very clear. So there are many issues. So lots of benefits of freedom for EU citizens as well. It's not just British citizens in the EU. We will also lose a lot of benefits associated with freedom of movement. One of them is there was a technical document from ILPA, which is the Immigration Law Practitioners Association, just issued in the last week. And at the moment, if I'm a student, for instance, and I start my degree before Brexit, I pay home fees, i.e. the same fees as UK citizens, and I can have access to loans. Post-Brexit, question mark, probably not. And that, being able to access home fees and loans is a direct benefit of freedom of movement. Opposite situation, I've been thinking myself about doing a PhD, but I'm priced out here. So I've been looking at doing one in Europe. I mean, you can do a PhD, not all of them, but you can do a number of PhDs at sort of remote control, being here, but being in a university in the EU, where it's a lot cheaper, in some cases it's free. Yeah. And post-Brexit, I will be considered a third country national by Europe. Because it's about where you live and not about your nationality. I used to have a job with a charity based in Brussels, and I was able to do this because it was EU funded, and post-Brexit I won't be able to do this because, again, it's about where I live and not who I am. So, dual nationals, a lot of problems, at-risk groups, people with disabilities, etc. There are a lot of problems there. Oversight and ECJ protection. We still don't know. So this is our roadmap. This is what we're trying to do at the moment, these 3 points. So we're trying to be quite pragmatic about it as well. And this is the current EU guidelines, like timeline, I'm sorry. So they are talking at the moment. So officially it starts in March, but they are talking already. There's a lot of to and fro, and we think that David Davis might be going to Brussels next week. Should be quite interesting because we'll be there as well. We're giving evidence in the European Parliament. So yeah. So Brexit or no Brexit, we have to work on the basis that Brexit might happen. So what we want to do is make sure that we are involved in any drafting of the withdrawal agreement. We've been doing a lot of commenting. Every time there's a round of negotiations, there are loads of technical docs that circulate, and we've been commenting on that as well as other people. So we want to be allowed to continue doing that. And that's pretty much where we're at the moment. And again, one of the crucial things is the withdrawal agreement and what will be in there, but also the attitude of the British state, which is the hostile environment, another big question mark. So contact, we've got on Facebook these 2 pages, the forum for EU citizens, as well as which is the forum. This is a more sort of general page with information. Twitter and website, we've got all our documents are there, and we've got an army of extraordinary volunteers and very good at updating the website on a regular basis. That's me.